Is it too late to redo all of the Cameron ones with a theme song that does Cameron-A-Rama to the tune of Guantanamera?
Yeah, it's too late for that.
I've been walking around my house all morning just going, Cameron-A-Rama, happy to Cameron-A-Rama. I see some fish people. Da, 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 da. Anyway, this is Framework. I am Al Schwartz. With me is John Bernard.
Yeah, it's me.
We
Hey.
are here to wrap up the Cameron-A-Rama.
Yeah.
and,
Gone too soon, yes.
Yes. Yeah, not. This is the shortest one we've done so far, right? Because
Yeah.
Cameron, not the most prolific of the big auteurs.
9. I think Tarantino was 9 as well. We kind of did True
Was it?
Romance in there.
And yeah, we kind of threw From Dusk Till Dawn, and so I think like the rankings episode had over 10. But this one really almost has 8 because we're going to count down here in sort of the reverse order. We'll end with both of our number ones and have our number twos after that. But at the bottom of the pack, we both have Piranha 2, obviously. Barely even a James Cameron movie. He has disowned it.
An asterisk of a film, if ever there was one.
Yeah. We can jump right past that and to the most Cameron movies, the Avatar movies, which we both had otherwise at the bottom of the list. The difference being you put Way of Water above the original Avatar, and I did the opposite.
My goodness, really? Way of Water under the original?
I did. Well, it's funny because you put Way of Water higher, but the reason they were so close, like I was like flipping a coin, but what ultimately made me put the original above was something you said in our Way of Water episode about how it was going to lose even more on a TV screen.
Well, probably, yeah, but I don't know if I'm even going to watch it on a TV screen to find out. So,
Well, yeah.
I'm probably just going to, maintain my good opinion of it from the theaters and leave it at that.
Yeah, my theatrical experience was shit too, though. So,
yeah, I guess that's right. I mean, it's exactly what happened when I watched the first one at home. I was just like, oh, no. And I'm sure that would happen again with Way of Water if I watch it at home. But I'm going to get around that by just not watching it again, is my plan.
Well, when I'm trying to do these rankings and I hit a wall, I'd use if I had to watch one of them tonight, which one would I do? And oftentimes at the bottom of these lists, it's the shorter one wins out anyway. But because of that factor, I was like, yeah, well, even if they were both available, I think the first one's still pretty much watchable at home. I mean, the other thing is like, we kind of went over this in the Way of Water episode, but just for as much as people rave about like what a visually incredible film Way of Water is and a titanic leap forward in effects technology or whatever, when I try and conjure up an image of these movies in my head, Way of Water is just like blue on blue. It was the hardest to find a thumbnail image to put on that episode because it's all mush of just blue people on blue backgrounds,
Well, yeah, I mean, we talked about, like, in the episode, all these things that are in between us and the characters, our understanding of physics and the cats and all of that. It's like aliens with different bodies and alien planets with different gravity and different water and tails and, all these things that make it just sort of an alien experience to watch. Yeah. And, that's just kind of going to be a less interesting experience for me because it robs it of stakes. It's what we talked about in the episode. I mean, I don't really have new thoughts on Way of Water since we talked about it other than I am indeed struck by how popular it is after all. And, how overwhelming its success is and it's showing up on best of the year lists and everyone, and I'm just like, what the fuck? And, fine, I'm on the outside of this one, okay, but still, it's just like, why this,
I don't get it, because for me, like you said, there's that dissonance between the really heavy core environmentalist message and the completely unnatural look of the entire milieu of these movies just never resolves for me. And in particular, how the thematic representations of nature in this movie are the characters that look the most computery and out of place. And it just, you can you can do that nature versus technology like stuff in an unnatural environment. I mean, in a fully animated movie, they like not, Ferngully, obviously people like to throw around as a, as a dig on the original Avatar, but I think more like something like Princess Mononoke, but
yeah,
because that doesn't have the live action elements that are like intruding and pulling me back out of it, and then also like on the wrong side. Yeah, this. I'm supposed to be on the side of the natural world, except that the only things that look remotely natural are the rapacious humans that, don't even. Stephen Lang doesn't even look all that natural either when he's in human form.
No, he looks all HGH'd out, and But the thing about that is, I love Princess Mononoke. That's a good ass movie.
Yeah, great movie.
Or Spirited Away, great movie to watch. I love watching those movies. I don't understand why this movie why I can't enjoy this as much as those movies. It has so much in common with them, and if you put them all on a checklist, you would have many things that you would click off. It's like, yep. But in the end, it just does not have that Miyazaki thing. It doesn't have the characters, doesn't have the world. It has the message, but like you say, in the end, that is form at war with function.
That's a very good way of putting it.
Yeah.
But the way that sort of seems to open up a new front, or it finds a new uncanny valley, hitherto undiscovered valley of uncanniness. Because the traditional uncanny valley is all about creeping you out when something is lifelike. The movie Megan that is about to come out that everybody is apparently gaga over.
Apparently good. Who knew, right?
Is all about that. And the Na'vi don't do that because they're not trying to look human, but there is something like we talked about before, the physics. There's an uncanny valley there where nothing they do feels real or visceral. Like contrast this with Terminator 2, right? And I think of the shot where Arnold's Terminator is getting manhandled by the T-1000, right? And he gets his skull smashed by this big hanging iron beam.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Of course, yes.
Yeah, and that shot looks and feels like visceral and painful in a way like no punch or bullet or anything that the Na'vi take or give at any point in these movies ever does. And it's like, even though, like, textually speaking, that's an inhuman robot that doesn't actually feel pain the way we understand it. And the Na'vi do presumably have a nervous system that experiences the pain of a bullet wound the same way that we would. But
or maybe not, know. Who knows?
But no, they never throw a punch that seems to land with any weight.
Well, there's the arrows in the face that those guys will occasionally get, but you know what? No, they're not as good though.
Yeah, occasionally a giant arrow hits through a mech when it's one of those live action elements, and you're kind of taken aback by how hard it hits, but it's also sometimes taken aback by, oh right, these guys are at like 1.6 scale, so their arrows are like cartoonishly large. But anyway, I think we've beaten that seahorse to death at this point. So.
I mean, it's a shame. I wish I was on the inside of these. I really do.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, I've lamented that he's just going to be doing these forever here. This is going to be the back half of James Cameron's entire career. Just about the Na'vi. So, too bad you don't like them, John. They're here to stay.
Yeah.
Because apparently everyone else likes them, I guess. Look, I don't want to be bitter about that. It's fine. It's just that he made so many good-ass movies that we're about to talk about now.
Yeah. That's like, no, I am legit jealous when I see people come back who maybe just went to it. Maybe if I had gone to the 3D IMAX instead of the nonsense 4DX that I did, I could have had that. And who are like blown away and say, this is the most incredible film experience I've had in decades or whatever. And I'm like, man, I wish like, and people are like, oh, I've never seen anything like this. I'm like, well, I mean, I've seen a cartoon before. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, 3D IMAX is kind of, I mean, you get the right movie, right place, you can still have that experience. I had it with Dune. That was the last one. We talked about that. I came out of that. I was like, oh, that was great. Yeah,
Yeah. And that was a basement movie for me, unfortunately. I had a newborn, so that was like a 3-night, over. Yeah, not ideal.
That was like 1 month away from having a baby. It was the last big movie that we went to, and so of course, well, it's like we said, it depends on the mood you're in. That's part of it too. And look, if you went in and you were like, I love Avatar, the first one, I bet I'm going to have a great time here. I'm sure you would. Of course you would, And I mean that, that it's it does one up the first movie in so many ways, and that's why I have it over the first one. Really, it kind of gets rid of that static narrative, and it does weird stuff instead, and that's why I do prefer it to the first one marginally. But again, that would be subject to change if I were to watch it again, and it's probably not very likely right now.
The most arbitrary distinction is on these lists is between these two for me. I mean, the top two spots are very close, but this is really a coin flip. I will say the one thing that I think I mentioned in the last episode, but is a point in Way of Water's favor is how it is like a full-blown legacy sequel that, generally something I dislike, but handles that stuff a lot better than most of the more traditional legacy sequels in terms of actually like shifting the focus to the next generation people that they're, supposedly setting up to carry the torch forward. And with those other, legacy sequels that are actually have the older stars still involved and have a bit longer between the installments, it seems like if you asked everybody who made it, they'd always, pay lip service to the idea that, oh yeah, we're setting up Mutt Lange or Goose Jr. or whoever to be, the next generation's Maverick or whatever. But when those original stars are still involved, they have a little too much clout, too much ego to ever actually see the spotlight. And in this case, whether it's because, Sam Worthington doesn't have that kind of clout to throw around, or the CGI makeup makes it so that like nobody's face is that important, or just Jim Cameron does whatever he wants. It really is the kid's movie, I think, to its benefit.
If anything, it's Cameron's movie. If there's a legacy character coming back, it's Jim Cameron.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he's like he's the Maverick in this, he's the recurring. Maybe it just seems like that way to me because, we've been for the last 6 months just setting up this James Cameron narrative by watching all his movies. I don't know. Well,
I'm in the trenches with you here, so it makes total sense to me when you say
it. Exactly. Yeah.
But speaking of that, so the next one we're going to talk about here is True Lies, which I have at 6, you have at 5. And the thing that strikes me about that one is it's the one Cameron movie that I forget is his at times, or that I forget. If you ask me to list his movies off the top of his head, it's the one I might forget because it feels more like an Arnold movie than a Cameron movie.
I think that's it in a nutshell, yeah.
Nowhere else in his filmography, even when he's like working in somebody else's franchise, like Aliens, like does not have every other movie. I mean, Aliens is a weird franchise, especially at that point. It doesn't have like an overwhelming identity, and it got so weird and inconsistent after that it still doesn't.
I mean, that is sort of the identity of the Aliens films in the long run, because they change the director every time. You get Ridley Scott, auteur, goes to Cameron, brings in his sensibility, goes to Fincher, new auteur, even Jean-Pierre Jeunet makes the film his own.
Yeah, well, we're not to the Aliens portion yet anyway. We're still True Lies.
Yeah, but, you're right. Sorry.
I mean, I guess the introduction I said here was it's the one you forget about in his filmography, which we did by immediately launching into Aliens.
Right. True Lies. Good. I like it more than it deserves. And that's why I've got it here at 5, which is probably higher than it should be. But, I was watching it. I'm kind of just like, yeah, I have fond memories of this. There's some stuff that leaps out to me now. But, I mean, it's Cameron for hire. And, he does a really good job at it, though. And the weirdness is kind of appealing, too, really. The weird sex games that they're playing with each other, that's unusual. You don't often see that in family action movies, which, is kind of what this is.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it is. It's also pretty R-rated for being a fan. And, I mean, not just for the sex stuff, but for the violence. I don't know.
Well, it's the James Cameron thing, where he makes, like, the most R-rated PG-13 movies, and
right,
or the most PG-13 R-rated movie, whatever. It's R-rated movies for young people. That's what James Cameron makes.
Yes.
And yeah.
Is it though? I mean, because it's about marriage.
Yeah, but it's not about like real marriage.
Yeah,
it's about sitcom marriage.
I guess that's true. It's about sitcom marriage.
Yeah, it's like,
You've probably seen Home Improvement if you're 12 or whatever when this comes out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think what this demonstrated to me, and it's definitely a weird thing to say given some of the stuff I'm going to say about their work together in like 15 minutes from now, but it clicked me here. I don't think Cameron and Arnold are actually like a good fit for each other's sensibilities.
I think I disagree with that, Al. I gotta say, I don't know.
The Terminator is a weirdly great, just perfect usage of Arnold. But
yes,
there's something in an Arnold movie, which, as we established, this is there's something inherently comedic about it whenever Arnold is fighting like other mortal humans. If it's not an all-time great like movie monster like a Terminator or a Predator, it's just kind of there. And comedy is not really a strength of Cameron.
No,
leaning into that
really.
that inherent goofiness doesn't seem like a bad idea. But I almost feel like Cameron's action sequences are like a little bit too good to be in a goofy action comedy.
I don't know if I agree with that. I mean, they're definitely better than the movie needs or deserves. But I think that kind of just makes the movie better. The action is definitely one of the things I love about True Lies. I would say, and here's where I agree with you about True Lies. I think Arnold, one of Cameron's big strengths as an action director is that he's kind of uninterested in gigantic badasses like Arnold, who can't be defeated. All of his protagonists tend to be on the back foot. They are in mortal danger and very close to dying, one step ahead from whatever's chasing them. It's very true of Terminators, obviously. It's true of Aliens. It's kind of what's going on in the Abyss. It's definitely what's going on in Titanic. Avatar, less so. They're going for it, though. True Lies, not at all the case. I mean, from the start that Arnold was going to have no trouble defeating these guys. They are not a serious threat.
Yeah, Crimson Jihad does not stand a chance. Like,
yeah,
Chris from Kindergarten Cop had a better fighting chance than Crimson Jihad had in True Lies.
Yeah, those bad guys suck, So, like, it's... I mean, that's just sort of dissimilar for him, for Cameron. It's not at all dissimilar for a 90s action movie. That's kind of what they were. Or for an Arnold movie, for that matter.
Yeah.
I mean, hell, you put Arnold in the antagonist role in Terminator to make that work.
Exactly.
And one of the most amazing things about T2 is that they find a way for Arnold to function as an underdog in it. And so, I think as a result, the emotional life of this film lives entirely within the marriage plot line, and that's weird because it's weird stuff. And that's just not how a James Cameron action film functions usually.
That's fair enough. So charging forward here, you had Titanic at 5. I have it at 4. But that is, the next one coming up here. I mean, you could certainly make the case that this is his, most triumphant moment, that it is the apex of his career. That is, King of the World was the catchphrase, not inapt for how that really, it's kind of hard to remember in a pre-streaming era how this took over all of pop culture for 6 months.
Oh yeah. Jokes on every late night show, Saturday Night Live, all of it, and it's still there pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, people talk about how Avatar didn't make an impact. Titanic made an impact.
Yeah, even now, 20 odd years later, you can play 3 or 4 notes on a clarinet or whatever the hell it's
recorder.
On. Yeah, you could be like a kindergarten kid's recorder. You could play just a few notes on it and people will recognize that. I mean, what this edged the Abyss for me, because you and I have basically Titanic and the Abyss 4 and 5, but just in reversed order. And what we went into in that episode is that what I'd remembered after 20 years was mostly the camp elements, and forgot how just fucking hard the tragic moments swing, and that Jack's death is not really the focus of the tragedy, at least when I watch it now. But also, I think the thing that edges it up for me is less surprised that the camp elements even work better for me, because now I come to it embracing the sort of unreliable narrator aspect to it that makes a little more sense of the over the top performances of Billy Zane's, ultimate asshole boyfriend to end all asshole boyfriends and snob to end all snobs, and Jack's sort of impossible manic pixie dream boy aspects.
I have to admit, when you brought that up in the episode, I was like, oh yeah, totally, of course, you're right. But I was like, oh shit, that actually solves this whole film. You should have said that at the time. Sorry about that. But yeah, clearly that is how this film works. That is the emotional buy-in. It still doesn't make me particularly emotional, but it works. And, yeah, sure, some of that is I just hadn't watched it in 20 years because I didn't get it at first, but,
The drowning children make me emotionally connect to it, which is kind of cheap, but, But like, also, what are you supposed to do with that story? Like, it's not like he inserted that as a cheat code to get to me personally.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I say I didn't get emotionally hit by it, that's not a boast. That's like a lament, Yeah. I mean, like Avatar, it's one I wish I was more emotionally connected to. But this one is also more undeniable. Mm-hmm. I mean, it has things about it that are really fun, really delightful, like Billy Zane, of course, And, sure, like the Bill Paxton stuff is in there. That's like the only thing in the movie I would say is like actively bad. The only thing in that movie that actually does not work as intended. Everything else in Titanic, good. Clearly good, in fact.
It is objectively bad, but I still find it kind of delightful just because Bill Paxton being kind of scummy is just, one of the treasures of our time that we have lost. It's...
Well, I think it's just that Bill Paxton himself is really great all the time. And, I mean, he's especially good in James Cameron movies. That's a great thing to have on hand no matter what. So, him being there is good.
Yeah. He's got a great eye for casting, Winslet and DiCaprio, it's kind of easy to take for granted this far down the line, but he made both of them with this movie. And turns out, you wouldn't necessarily even get this from this movie, but two of the best actors of their generation. And you see them elevating it for sure. But because their material's not super sophisticated by any means, but it's like I said, it's undeniable, as you said. So we don't need to deny it anymore, I guess.
Yeah. Okay, so Jack and Rose versus Jake Sully and Nate Terry. You got two like pro forma character types elevated by really good actors,
right?
And then you've got two characters that don't work because they're just swamped in 1,000 different abstractions and fail to elevate the pro forma character types. There was kind of like a nice way to say it would be a primal quality to a lot of Cameron protagonists. They are kind of, I don't want to say surface level, but they are immediately graspable as to what their deal is. And Titanic is an example of that really working out.
Yeah, it may just be that the Titanic success was so enormous that it's kind of like that magic touch can like survive almost anything except for this level of sustained success. Like, I think maybe he lost after Titanic, proved all the haters wrong. He sort of lost the last niggling voice of doubt in the back of his head. So like, maybe I need to tweak this script a little more. And now it's just about getting the animations right, is how it feels to me.
Well, yeah, like when you are the king of the world, when you have dominated something so completely, Stephen King has this problem, he doesn't edit anymore, because he's written 70 bestsellers.
How do you edit somebody after a certain point, like somebody like that, Like, is there a book editor out there right now whose job it is to like say, I don't know, George, I think this next Game of Thrones book should only be 850 pages. Like,
right. Yeah.
On what basis? You're probably right. But also like, where do you put your foot to make that point? I have no idea.
I mean, it's gotta be hard, right? It's gotta be hard to even have somebody like that around when you are James Cameron.
Before the movie's out, like, how do you even know who's right? It's a question. And like,
yeah, well, it's the thing you've heard repeatedly the last few months. Don't bet against James Cameron. I wasn't gonna. I mean,
yeah. All right, but we're talking about his greatest or his greatest triumph. Let's talk about his closest thing he's had to box office failure is The Abyss.
Mm-hmm. I had this high up. Yeah.
Well, look, the top three, I think we have the same.
Those are locked. Those are locked in.
They're locked in. The 4 to 5 spaces, the difference between 4 and 5 is almost where they're the only place where there's competition on this list.
Right. Yeah.
But The Abyss, for me, it suffers a bit from being kind of neither fish nor fowl. And
it's fish.
I mean, okay, it's definitely fish. It's like a deep sea pilot fish or something. But it's like, ultimately, it's a relationship drama, right? Like,
yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And it's like the only one that kind of works in like a human quadrant kind of.
But it's sort of an action thriller for an hour or so. But none of the action's on par with the rest of Cameron's output.
I don't know. It's all tubes filling with water, and it's pretty visceral.
Yeah, but it can't touch anything in Aliens or the Terminator movies, and I think Titanic fills rooms with water in more exciting fashions for my dollar.
Valid, I suppose.
It also has the 2001 sort of like head trip sci-fi stuff that feels especially half-baked in the theatrical cut.
It's kind of half-baked in the director's cut too, to be honest.
Right.
I mean, look, we talked about like his world building and how it is kind of confined to the movie it is in. That's very true of The Abyss too. Like you don't actually really need to know or want to know what the aliens' deal is once they rise out of the water. There's 1,000 questions, but you don't really give a shit. It's kind of just, they're aliens. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
I mean, they control water. What's the deal with that? I don't know. And, at the end of the day, that's kind of all there is. You don't have the big questions and you're not getting answers to it. What The Abyss is about is, like you're dropping into a trench and there's lights underneath you. And isn't that kind of scary? And it really succeeds on that level.
It might have the best Michael Biehn performance in the whole Cameron filmography as well. I feel like it doesn't get quite as much use out of that performance as I want from it. But, and it does have a couple of like the most memorable sequences. I mean, there's the CPR sequence is an incredibly iconic just sequence in the annals of film history. And I think a lot of people remember that, and they have a much hazier memory of anything else. I guess it's that and the water tentacle scene are probably what a person on the street could tell you about The Abyss.
Yeah, and those are like great moments in cinema for me. This is one I grew up on. I watched this on VHS many, many times growing up. I have nostalgia for like a lot of this movie that maybe wouldn't hit for people who came to it now, as an adult. But as a 12-year-old, I was deeply committed to the characters of Hippie and Cat and Bud and the rest of them. That's kind of where I'm coming from with it.
Yeah, I think you may have just hit on the difference between this for us, because I don't think I probably saw this for the first time until maybe 2010 at the earliest. I don't have any nostalgia attached to it.
Well, that is something that you can't get away from, really. Like I found this at the right time. Yeah. If I hadn't, I don't know that I would feel this way about it. I wouldn't probably. And that's just how it is. I like the Goonies still for the same reason, I feel like our generation turned on the Goonies, and I'm just like, it's fun. Come on.
Yeah. The Goonies is never my absolute favorite, but when people turn on that one, I'm just kind of like, okay, freaking Scrooge, just let it be, all right?
Like, it's the Goonies.
What do you need? What do you need to prove against the Goonies?
Yeah.
I mean, I'll sing a different tune when we get the Goonies Legacy sequel, like streaming on Disney Plus next year or whatever.
Man, they've been trying to make that for like 15 years now, man. I think that the window might have closed. I think they actually are all too old now. They're a little too old to have kids that age, right?
Ke Kwan's back in the mix, baby.
Yeah,
he give you the lead.
You're right. I mean, I guess if you get Sean Astin, Josh Brolin, and Ke Kwan back, you get them together again,
and you can
you can, yes.
That's less of a wrangling project than any given Avengers movie.
Yeah. Okay. Corey Feldman will show up. No problem there.
I think Mouth died off screen. Let's just.
Yeah, okay.
That's true. Martha Plimpton will show up, and she can probably even rope Garrett Dillahunt into showing up to play like a villain or something.
All right. Yeah, Garrett Dillahunt versus the Goonies.
Yes, the next generation of Goonies.
Yeah. Oh, of course. Right. Or maybe, or would it be better if it was just them as like old people and they don't have? No, that would clearly be much worse. That's worse.
It's okay, I got it, man.
Why are we talking about this? I'm so sorry.
Well, because I figured it out. It's Margot Martindale plays
Oh,
the long lost sister of Mama Fratelli, and Garrett Dillahunt is her idiot son, and they're chasing around a new generation of kids for revenge/treasure.
You're not wrong. This is kind of great. So okay. Let's put them some more interesting. Like the American Southwest, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
All right, so that's The Abyss, folks.
Yeah.
Okay, so the only thought I have of The Abyss is it's the one Cameron movie that really comes out as less than the sum of its parts for me, whereas all of his like really successful ones are definitely more.
I can see that, but it's more than the sum for me. I think most of these are more than the sum, and that's true of most of these. I mean, I think they all kind of have like a cumulative power. Even True Lies, a lot of problems in True Lies, but when I watch it, I'm like, hey, it's True Lies.
It's still all these years later the only action movie I can think of that where people are like fighting on top of a Harrier jet as it hovers in the middle of a cityscape like that. It feels like that should have been every other action movie in the 90s, but I can't think of any others that actually did it.
Live Free or Die Hard does it.
I'm going to take your word on that and not actually watch any Die Hard after A Vengeance.
Yeah, they do it. It's bad. It's worse than True Lies. That's all.
All right, so let's move on to the top three. This is where, things are pretty unassailable. We both have Terminator, the first Terminator, as number 3.
Yeah.
My thing on that, we went into in that episode, just a sort of platonic ideal of genre blending.
Amazing film. Amazing that it came out when it did. Amazing use of a small budget. Amazing, like, arrival film for Cameron and for Schwarzenegger and Michael Biehn and Linda Hamilton. Throw them all in there. It's a triumph for everybody involved. Man, what a film. It just grabs you by the collar, makes you pay attention no matter where you are in your life, no matter how old or young you are. I mean, it's just a fascinating, delightful, perfect movie. This would have been like my number one like 5 years ago, I think. These top three kind of jockey for position. An argument can be made that this is the best one, for real.
Certainly. That's the argument that would be made by people our age who've decided the Goonies suck.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that's a swipe at no one in particular, but also like the Terminator rules. Like it is iconic. It is so good on such a, like you say, a small budget and scope that they're still building out like, sequels number 8 and 9 now, even though 7 of those sequels haven't worked. But they're like, no, but like just watch the original and you're like, we got to be able to do more with this, right? And everybody's like, yeah, of course we can. It's such a good premise.
It's such an 80s apocalypse too, or maybe it's just so striking and fundamental that it is just how we think of 80s apocalypses at this point.
I think it became sort of how we think of apocalypses. Like it's,
Yeah, that's a better way of saying
20 years later, The Matrix couldn't quite escape this, for as inventive as that movie is on so many levels. It's still kind of like in the post-apocalyptic future, it's like, well, it's a Terminator scenario.
It's kind of striking to me how you can already feel James Cameron fully formed in Terminator. Like it's all there. It's like his voice, his style, his heart is all there. We're about to talk about John Carpenter, and it's pretty easy to imagine what John Carpenter's Terminator would look like.
That's true.
It's easy to imagine the ways it would specifically be different than Cameron's. And as cool as that might be, I mean, there's no way it compares to what we did get, which is The Terminator by James Cameron, which gave us, of course, Schwarzenegger and James Cameron. But as a film unto itself, it has everything you could possibly want in a James Cameron movie. Everything. In an hour and 40 minutes.
When you revisit it in the light of his whole career now, the thing that takes you by surprise, I think, is how like sincere and kind of sweet the romance angle is.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because that's not really what you remember. I mean, that's not the sequences that are iconic from this. You remember the Terminator material, but that's like, oh yeah, like you can kind of see how eventually this guy would get to Titanic.
Yeah, it is a really interesting sci-fi romance from the premise on down. I mean, it gives you a lot to, wrangle with about fate and predestination, all that. And I think it's because it works, both within the characters, who are both really good, and you believe it, but also just in the questions, you're like, wait, what if he's there? But then, isn't that creative? I'm talking about like the paradox stuff, you know?
Right. Of course.
Yeah, and I love that, and I feel like movies now you would kind of have to like square that knot or explain yourself, or kind of make a point of what's going on. And here they don't. They just say, like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. Fucking deal with it. It's just like a chicken or the egg mystery, and you're left with it, and it kind of doesn't matter, and that's great.
I might even say that it does matter, but it's better if we're not solving it. Yeah,
well, that's a better way of saying it. Sure.
We'll talk a little more Terminator in a moment, but in the meantime, let's stop off at Aliens, because you had Aliens number 1. I ultimately put it at number 2, and I'm going to talk about it first, just because we've already done 2 Aliens like centric devoted podcast episodes. So we said a lot about it already, but it is, simply put, just one of the best movies ever made.
Yeah, I love this. And we talked about this in the episode. I think the instinct is to compare it directly to the first movie. And I think when you watch them back to back, my takeaway generally is, I think I like Alien a little bit more, but when you do not watch them back to back, it reveals how purely excellent Aliens actually is. Like, as a standalone. I mean, it's a movie that you don't even really need the first one to still be as effective. It works as on its own.
I can vouch for this, because I mean, Terminator 2 works the same way as Aliens, and this is, I saw them both before seeing the originals.
Right.
And for that, I think I like them both better than the originals. Probably that has a huge hand in that. But it's not, I didn't feel like confused enough that I had to go back and ask any questions about the originals.
No, not at all. Not at all.
To go through it. And that is, I mean, I guess you could call it a lost art in today's sequel environment, although it's also just a change it's an adaptation to a new environment. I mean, sequels used to kind of have to be that way because you couldn't easily access the first one. You couldn't even like look up the Wikipedia entry to get a plot synopsis. And there was 2 ways to square that, which one was make the sequel Beverly Hills Cop 2 and just rerun the same gags and sequences with a different villain, or you could do something like this, which is kind of start from scratch, do a little bit of recap, like the 2 elements that you're carrying over from the first one, and then do a new thing.
I mean, yeah, this is just like textbook great, start to finish. Every choice is right. Everything pays off. Every casting decision is spot on. All these characters like really work. Everyone's iconic, and I'm not just talking like the 3 most important ones. Like Apone is iconic in this. He is.
Well, Bishop is great too.
Bishop is amazing. Bishop is one of the best androids in the history of movies, for sure.
It's because of this film, like only this film, that Lance Henriksen is something approaching a household name.
Yeah.
It's a great name too. It's got good mouthfeel.
I mean, look, yeah, it's great. It's bowling a perfect game. It's everything masterful. It's exactly what I was saying about the Terminator. Really, this is the kind of stuff Cameron can do. Yeah. It's one of the best action movies ever made. It's certainly one of the best sci-fi action movies ever made. You could just keep throwing superlatives at
one of the best thrill rides. It's one of the only successful versions of this thing that I don't know if we've talked about it, but just the idea of doing a sequel that switches to a different genre. Enough of the horror concept that gives it some extra juice, but the way it embraces, like I said, being an action movie. I'm struggling to think of another example off the top of my head of a film franchise, or even just 2 movies that jump genres that much.
I wish more people tried it. You got to have giant balls to do it, is the thing.
That's true.
You got to be so good. You got to have your shit done. And especially when you're coming off of like another undeniable, word of the day, I guess, masterpiece in the first Alien. And then you follow it up with another undeniable masterpiece in Aliens. I mean, that's incredible. That's crazy trick shot stuff, and he's doing it here at the beginning of his career. I mean, who's doing stuff like this? Like, not just like now, but like at any point, at the middle of their career, whatever. like, I guess Spielberg, I guess like that. But I mean, that's the tier we're talking about, like Rare Air. That's the only place you see this kind of creative imagination and energy.
Again, I mean, something we talked about in those other episodes, just one of the most influential movies in history, and not just influencing movies, but video games, all kind of like future aesthetics. The Space Marine is just an archetype now.
Yeah, just Space Marines. I mean, look, I'm sure there's like plenty of versions of Space Marines that came out before this, right. But these have defined what we think of as Space Marines. I take Starship Troopers, that's...
Yeah, that book came out before Aliens, so maybe, who's taken from who is whatever, but...
Visually, he defines them.
Yeah, you picture these guys, yes.
And, the Starship Troopers movie, basically, they look like aliens.
Did they use the armor, like, designs? It's the same, like, gray helmets and vests, right?
Basically, yeah. I mean, they're a little more fascist, I think. That's about it.
Yeah, they shined them up. Yeah, well, we'll have to have a Starship Troopers episode at some point. God, what a great movie.
We certainly will, yeah.
But we have one more movie to talk about here, and that's Terminator 2. And, look, John.
Yeah.
Am I going to sit here and tell you that Terminator 2 is the best movie ever made? Like, of course not. Okay? I mean, it's Arnold Schwarzenegger's playing a lovable killer robot. Like, there's other, more important films that have happened, but am I going to sit here and say that anyone has ever made a better movie than Terminator 2? No. Absolutely not going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay? No one has ever understood the assignment more, and nobody's ever knocked that assignment farther out of the park than James Cameron with Terminator 2: Judgment Day.
Yeah, this is watching Babe Ruth hit a home run. I mean, this is watching the best person do the best job that anyone's ever done. Yeah.
You're like, oh, Citizen Kane is so innovative, and sure, but like Orson Welles didn't fly a goddamn helicopter under an underpass.
He didn't.
And Godfather and Vertigo, Apocalypse Now are all like, not a single one of those fucking things has a shape-shifting killer robot in it.
Yeah, to their detriment and eternal shame, really.
Yeah. I don't know who the fuck Jeannie Dillman or whoever is.
Yeah.
But until she's going to break a mop handle off and beat down some creep that licked her wrong, like, keep her the fuck out of my face.
Yeah, there's a thing about seeing material like this executed at this level. It just makes the heart sing, I mean, for anyone who, like, grew up loving movies, these are the kind of movies that make you love movies. These are the ones you start with. These are like the indelible moments that define a love of the art form. That perv licking Sarah Connor's face before she beats him with a broom.
Yeah.
It's nothing less than that.
It is kind of like great filmmaking with training wheels, right? Like that, it gets you into, I guess, less bombastic things. I mean, because it is.
I don't mean that in like a backhanded or pejorative way at all. I mean, like really, like finding a way to strike young people with like the potential of cinema. That's no light thing at all. That's amazing. That's what you need.
That is core to what I think is so perfect about this movie, and it is it is the best action movie ever, probably, because it's sort of for everyone, or at least everyone that might be interested in action movies. And, it's, as you talked about before, like it's sort of a kid's movie, but it really earns its R rating. So it's almost got like some of that Pixar thing going on where it's like the hardcore, disaffected action junkie doesn't have to feel embarrassed about being into this at all, even if it's kind of more aimed towards his 10-year-old nephew on some levels.
Well, yeah, and, but like those things all still work, I think, is maybe like the lesson of Cameron, like the basic emotions, the simple, the primal, like understanding of things in the world. Like we get when we're first kind of graduating to, more adult movies, when we're like, when we still kind of have the magic of childhood a little bit, but we're also a little more aware of how adult things work, how movies are made. They're real good puberty movies, I guess is what I'm saying. And that's like all of them though, and I'm sure Avatar is probably doing that to teenagers right now. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know about that.
Yeah, I mean, it must be working for some people.
It must be, it's making that money, so I guess.
But I mean, again, it's not that because it works so perfectly for that age bracket that it doesn't work for adults, and that
no,
the
of
way
course it does.
It also does some genre straddling, and it's got, like I said, it's sort of the ultimate action movie. It's like the set pieces are as big and as gonzo as anything that you find like anywhere in the genre, but they're also, none of them really feel superfluous. It's all like in service of an actual story that has some actual ideas in it, and like it's a legit sci-fi movie, while also being as pure action movie as anything, like on the side of the raid, and you never call it pretentious about any of that sci-fi stuff.
No, not at all.
Not for a second. It's got a bit of horror movie, spice in it, but you don't have to like be into horror movies to be into that, and it's kind of sad, but it has a happy ending, really. So it's
something for everybody. Kind of. It even has sort of like a little core nugget of misanthropy at the center of it. Mm-hmm. Just a slight hint of, hey, we're all fucked. We're all fucked, and then of course can pull back from that in the end. But it is kind of appealing as a teenager, as an adult too, to kind of just be like, yeah, we are going to destroy ourselves. Of course, that, right? We're all going to destroy ourselves. That's what's going on here.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, that I think it's good to at least pay lip service to in fiction, because if you don't, if it's you do the love conquers all messaging all the time, that can feel pretty false too. And in fiction, you can deal with that fatalism of, well, yeah, we're gonna wipe ourselves out before we colonize the stars or whatever, and that's not quite as crushingly depressing when it's filtered through robots fighting on screen.
But they resolve it too at the end. It's like, well, maybe we won't. Maybe we won't kill ourselves.
Yeah, but
that's appealing, and that's very Cameron too. That's fitting with the Cameron worldview.
It's a maybe though, because it is the darker at night. It's not a sunrise that they're going into. Like so I'm saying, it's got a little bit for everybody, and it even does. It's got the Cameron, warrior woman protagonist in a way, like
the best one too, right? Well, I mean, Sigourney.
I probably give the edge to Ripley, like at least because Aliens is more firmly her movie than I think Sarah Connor is the most relatable of the protagonists here, but it's sort of a three-hander protagonist situation.
Yeah, but Ripley is, of course, it straddles a series of movies with different creators, and Sarah Connor is, purely Cameron, the number one Cameron, the ultimate Cameron.
But circling back to that word undeniable again, like even the most like hardcore, sour men's rights activists that hates females in his action movies, like doesn't have any stones to throw at Sarah Connor. Like she's
no.
And but there's probably any number of reasons for that. Partly because it's a three-hander situation where it's not all about her and it's she's legitimately fucked up. But God, what a great performance by Linda Hamilton! Just I don't know, just great goddamn movie all around. I mean, it's
we talked about this, and it's unimpeachable. It is a landmark in cinema. It is perfect.
Yeah, it's in the conversation for best action movie ever, best sci-fi movie ever, best 90s movie, best sequel. It's in all this.
Best Arnold, the ultimate Arnold, really.
I think it is the best Arnold, but I mean, it's not. It wins handily, in my opinion. I put it in the running for best movie monster ever, too. I love the T-1000 so much.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a cornucopia of delights. And a fine choice for number one. I think it's certainly the representative Cameron pick for number one. I mean, I think everyone would agree on that one as a great number one pick, right?
I don't know. I think Aliens is a little bit more a classier pick.
Yeah, but is classy what we're going to James Cameron for, though, in the end?
There's a good button for this whole project. Like, no, not exactly.
Yeah. We're not going to see James Cameron's The Fabelmans. He's not.
Well, that was The Abyss, wasn't it?
Yeah, basically. He's never going to stop making movies, like this. That's what he does. I do wish they were not all going to be about the Na'vi, but yeah, this is his bread and butter, essentially. And not just that, he's like uninterested in changing or doing anything other than these gigantic big blockbuster movies. And, you know, he doesn't need to do it for respect. They all came to him. They all came to his big blockbusters and said, yes, these are worthy of awards. They're great. That is unprecedented. Spielberg had to make a Holocaust drama before they gave him an Oscar.
Well, yeah, the biggest stretch for him was Titanic, just because it was a period piece and like a costume drama. All of his other movies, if they're
but
not
it's also a disaster picture, which is the worst genre. I mean,
but like every other one of his other movies, if they're not set in the future, they at least have heavy futuristic elements with the Terminator movies, you know?
Yeah, they're sci-fi action movies, like all of them, except I guess like Titanic and True Lies is
True Lies.
Sci-fi elements.
It might as well be.
And yeah, he's like climbed the mountain and he's made more money. He's gotten more critical acclaim. He's gotten every maximalist thing you could get out of making big movies. And he didn't have to change for anybody. I mean, you know, what can you say? He's the definitive movie winner. He's an absolute legend. There's nobody else like him. I'm glad we did this. This was fun.
I don't really want to saddle him with this because it's like, the expectations it creates are like impossible to meet up with, but I think it's significant that at least on my list, my top 4 for him all have female protagonists.
Yeah.
In genres, give or take the disaster genre, where that is very much not the norm. And, you know, these are also all came out at a time before it was fashionable to do that, before there was pressure on him to do that. He probably had to be the one applying the pressure.
Yeah.
To do that. And, you know, I'm not saying that he is God's perfect feminist or anything, but just that is a not insignificant thing.
Well, I think it's kind of the horror movie thing, you know, which is that, you know, he wants his protagonist to be put upon and have their backs against the walls.
Yes, maybe that.
And, you know, he uses sort of instinctive bias in the movie-going public against female action heroes to his advantage as a weapon, you know, as a director.
Yeah.
Cameron protagonists are just sort of inherently more empathetic than others. They just are.
Absolutely.
Sarah Connor, great example. Man, are we on her side in both movies. So on her side.
Yeah, even when she's legit crazy.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Still on her side. Yeah. All right. So from here we go to Carpenter. That's
yeah.
It's a wrap on Cameron until we return to Pandora, and God knows when.
I think 2 years is the plan. That's when we're back to Pandora, I believe.
It's about how long we need to get through the Carpenter filmography.
18 films. And I don't even know what we're going to do with like all his other projects, you know. He's a lot of those, but maybe nothing because it's 18 films, you know.
18's a lot. Let's
yeah. I'm super excited, man. I cannot wait. I have some weird Carpenter opinions, actually. Some of them are like my favorite movies ever made. Some of them are, you know, quite popular, and I'm just sort of like, I actually don't think this one's very good.
That's my thing too. Is I think he's got some of my favorite movies ever made, and I don't think I've seen half of these. So,
oh, that's cool. I've seen all but 2. Yeah. 2 unseen Carpenters for me: Starman and The Ward. This will be cool. Have you seen In the Mouth of Madness, Al?
I have. Yes, that's what I've seen, but I haven't seen Christine, Dark Star, The Ward, Starman. I don't think I ever saw Invisible Man. Never seen Vampires.
Vampires is a good time.
Okay.
Well, sort of. You feel bad about it afterwards, for sure.
All right, get excited. I'll see you soon on Dark Star, bud.
See you then, and indeed, hasta la vista, baby.